Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. My name is Iffah Syazwani with Teacher Arif. My matrix number is 72263. Today I'll present my FYP with the title of The Effects of Writing on Memory Retrieval Performance. My supervisor is Dr. Kartini binti Abdul Ghani and my evaluator for today will be Encik Muhammad Azhari bin Abu Bakar. Now, this presentation may be a bit different from previous semester. In previous semester, I only explained about chapter 1, 2, and 3. However, in this presentation, I'll be explaining the whole research from chapter 1 to chapter 5.
Chapter 1 Introduction. Now, before I start telling about the background of the study, I would like to say how I come up to do about writing and memory retrieval performance. So whenever there are tests or exams, I always read and write my notes and the results always show good improvements. So this leads me to wonder, do people do the same thing that I do, and does it give a good improvement as well? After doing some research, I discovered that there are various kinds of revision or study styles, usually categorized by visual, auditory, and kinesthetic style. Now, kinesthetic style is when you manipulate or you touch a material in order to learn them. A research in Malaysia shows that many tertiary students prefer to learn using kinesthetic modality. You can see here that writing is one of the kinesthetic learning style, which it requires a finger and half movement when we learn it. Now, a study in Malaysia also found that students understand and remember information orally and in writing. Thus, the big main question of this study is that, does the involvement of a physical activity when writing makes a difference in memory retrieval performance? Next, we move on to the problem statement and the research objectives. First, the problem statement is that previous studies did not directly point out the act of writing itself as the enhancer for memorization or memory retrieval. Instead, they only pointed out the components and the parts of working memory that is responsible when writing. Hence, it can be seen here that previous studies only focuses on comprehension rather than memorization. Additionally, studies also have shown that writing is indeed a powerful tool during revising or studying, but the literature or study, especially in East Malaysia, is still so little. Thus, the present study will investigate on writing using 3 different modes of encoding and its significant difference with memory retrieval performance among UNIMAS undergraduates in East Malaysia. Next, the research objective is to investigate if there is any significant difference between the 3 modes of encoding, which is reading-only tasks, reading and rewriting tasks, and reading and random writing tasks on memory retrieval performance. Next is the research questions and hypotheses. Starting with the first research questions, is there any significant difference between reading-only tasks and reading and rewriting tasks on memory retrieval performance? The second research question is there any significant difference between reading and rewriting tasks and reading and random writing tasks on memory retrieval performance? And the third research question is there any significant difference between reading-only tasks and reading and random writing tasks on memory retrieval performance? For hypothesis, the first one is that there is a significant difference between reading-only tasks and reading and rewriting tasks on memory retrieval performance. The second hypothesis, there is a significant difference between reading and rewriting tasks and reading and random writing tasks on memory retrieval performance. The third hypothesis, there is a significant difference between reading-only tasks and reading and random writing tasks on memory retrieval performance. Now, this is the conceptual framework of the study. On the left side of the screen is the IV, or the independent variable, which are the 3 modes of encoding. First, reading-only task. Second, reading and rewriting task. And third, reading and random writing task. The right side of the screen is the DV, or the dependent variable, which is the memory retrieval performance by measuring test scores. This will later be explained in details in Chapter 3 methodology. The one between the IV and the DV is the control variable that the study aims to control is the participant's IQ. Next, the definition of terms will be explained by the IV and the DV. Firstly, the IV, which is the modes of encoding, in terms of conceptual definition, is the conversion of sensory input into a form of capable of being processed and brought into memory. While the operational definition is the 3 different modes of encoding, which is reading-only tasks, reading and rewriting tasks, and reading and random writing tasks. DV, which is the memory retrieval performance, defined conceptually as a cognitive process in which the information stored are brought to consciousness. while the operational definition will be measured using the TOEIC or TOEIC listening and reading test. However, the study will only use the TOEIC reading part of the test, since the present study only uses reading as one of the IVs.
Next, I move on to the significance of the research. The first one is that there will be development of writing and memory-driven literature, not just for university students, but for lower-level institutions like primary school and high school students. The second significance is that this research will assist in the success of a strategic plan addressing various styles of methods during revision process in education. Chapter 2, Literature Review. Now, in the next part of the presentation, I'll explain the theories regarding the variables that took place in the research, such as reading and writing, working memory, and encoding and retrieving memory. The first theory of reading and writing, it is said that when one possesses fluent encoding and the knowledge, it allows them to take advantage of long-term memory resources. And the act of finding information when students read a material with the purpose to write, it is prone to be socially constructed and goal-oriented. Next is the working memory theory. Now this theory is very famous in our field, which is Baddeley's multi-component working memory model. It is said that central executive system is the core system that coordinates between visual spatial sketchpad and phonological loop to maintain and manipulate information. It is known that in Baddeley's multi-component working memory model that semantic encoding is a part of verbal short-term memory task that happens in the phonological loop, and by rehearsing, the materials can be refreshed in the phonological loop and later used for manipulation on memories. The third theory of encoding and retrieving memory says that memory encoding processes usually involve perception and comprehension of external events. It requires conscious awareness and vary in resource requirements depending on three things, which is familiarity of the stimuli, compatibility with prior learning, and importance to the observer. Next, I'll present about the studies or literature about writing and working memory, and also the past findings that heavily connected with the research that is currently being presented. One of the studies found that there are three writing processes that operate with the Baddeley's theory of working memory, which is formulation, execution, and monitoring. The second study found that using paper notebooks rather than digital devices when writing shows higher acquisition of rich encoding information. This is highly important for the current research as papers are used for rewriting tasks and random writing tasks. The last study found that memory skills underlying the writing activity is closely related to individual differences rather than gender differences. Next, I move on to the past findings of writing and working memory. Naka and Naoi found that repeated writing improved free recall to encoded writing, and that repeated writing also improved memory for graphic designs. And a study done by Vandenberg and Swanson revealed the executive component of working memory, which is what we have learned before, visual spatial sketchpad and phonological loop, significantly predicted planning, writing, and revision. Chapter 3, Methodology. Now in this chapter, I will explain about the research design, instruments, population and sample, reliability and validity, data collection procedures, and data analysis procedures. Starting with the research design, it is the experiment design that is quasi-experimental and quantitative. The analysis is by inferential analysis, which is the mean comparative analysis by using one-way ANOVA, and the sampling will be non-probability sampling technique, which is purposive sampling. The instruments goes by consent form, demographic form, the TOEIC reading paragraph and the TOEIC test, and also papers for rewriting group and random writing group. Next is the population and sample. Originally, for the population, it was supposed to be 60 UNIMAS undergraduates. However, due to limited time, the research can only get 45 UNIMAS undergraduates, which is by 15 for each of the modes of encoding group. Then sample would be the Dean List undergraduates. Next is the reliability and validity. According to Power Scheme and Wang, the Cronbach alpha reliability for the TOEIC reading test estimates on 0.95 and 0.94. Thus, it is safe to say that the TOEIC test is valid and reliable to use. Next is the data collection procedures. The participants were divided into three groups: 15 for reading only group, 15 for reading and rewriting group, and 15 for reading and random writing group, summing up to 45 of participants. They were all given consent form, demographic form, TOEIC reading paragraph, and TOEIC reading test. Only rewriting group and random writing group were given papers for them to write. They were all informed on how the test gonna be, which is having to fill in 7 blanks of the paragraph, and also inform that one blank is equivalent to 1 mark, and if fail on the right answer will be given a deduction of 1 mark. Now onto the data analysis procedures. All the data were analyzed using SPSS version 26, and since it is an inferential analysis, the data of demographic section of respondents were summarized in a summary table, and the mean scores of each of the modes of encoding groups were compared using one-way ANOVA in SPSS version 26. Now, on to Chapter 4 of Findings and Discussion. Since the research did not investigate on any demographic variables, hence the demographic will only be presented in a summary table. And again, it should be reminded that the population is only 45. Starting with gender, out of all 45 participants, 80% of them were females and 20% of them were males. Next is the age range. It can be seen that the majority of the participants belong in the age range of 21 to 23. For faculty, it can be observed that majority of the participants come from Faculty of Cognitive Science and Human Development. There were also some big number of participants that come from Faculty of Resource Science and Technology, and also Faculty of Language and Communication, and Faculty of Social Science and Humanities. Aside from these 4 faculties, all the remaining faculties only have 1 participant for each of them. We move on to the year of study. We can see that year 3 having the biggest number of participants that involved in the research. And lastly, the CGPA shows that the participants that involved also possess 3.70 and 3.79, with the majority of them following the 3.80 and 3.89. Next is the results of the inferential data analysis, starting with table 4.2 of test of homogeneity or variances table. It shows the highlighted part there of 0.509, showing that variances are homogeneous as p-value 0.509 is bigger than 0.05, showing that the use of ANOVA can be proceeded. Next is 4.3 one-way ANOVA table. The highlighted part there shows 0.004. This means that the significant value is 0.004 is much smaller than 0.05, show that there existed differences within the mode of encoding groups. Furthering the result on next table, which is 4.4 of multiple comparisons table. Now this table show exactly how there were differences in each of the modes of encoding group. The first highlighted part there of reading and rewriting, the significant differences value are 0.019, hence it is smaller than the value of 0.05, showing that there were significant difference in scores between reading only group and reading and rewriting group. After that is the reading and random writing group. The highlighted significant value there shows 0.006, which is the p-value is much smaller than 0.05, showing that there were significant differences in scores between reading only group and reading and random writing group. Lastly is the rewriting and random writing group. From the significant value, we can see that the 0.885 is much bigger than 0.05. Hence, there were no significant differences between rewriting group and random writing group. Based on the previous slides, we learned how there were significant differences in between each one of the modes of encoding groups. However, it is also wise to see how the mean differs from one to another. That's why the table right here showcases the mean of each of the modes of encoding groups. Then it can be concluded what are the hypotheses that are accepted and rejected. Based on the significant differences in the previous slides and the mean that are showcased here, it can be said that the first hypothesis is accepted as there is a significant difference between reading only tasks and reading and rewriting tasks on memory retrieval performance. And there is a significant difference between reading only tasks and reading and random writing tasks on memory retrieval performance. These 2 hypotheses are accepted. However, the second hypothesis are rejected as there is no significant difference between reading and rewriting tasks and reading and random writing tasks on memory retrieval performance. Now we move on to the last part of the presentation. Chapter 5, Limitation, Implication, Recommendations, and Conclusion. Starting with the limitation that this research cannot make a generalization since the data were not included by all the programs and faculties in the university. Thus, it cannot be a representation for all UNIMAS undergraduates. However, the the research can also imply that in general, writing when reading enhance working memory process, and that rewriting and writing randomly will both prove to boost better encoding and retrieval process than just only reading. And it is also recommend that further research need to be conducted on undergraduates with different levels of reading comprehension and education. And also different types of tests of exam should be used for reading comprehension. And to conclude everything about this research, that the act of writing really proved that it is one of the many revision styles that really help students remember. And kinesthetic style, that is of course writing, proved to promote better working memory progress. That is the end of my FYP presentation. Thank you.